Join us and our friends as we fall down the rabbit hole of security wonder. If you're ready to see how deep it goes, you've found the right place. Pour your tea. You're not late for office hours. And now, our Red Queen, Tara Wheeler.
Hey folks, it is another beautiful week in information security. Oh God, Tara Wheeler, CEO of Red Queen Dynamics, and as always, the inimitable and fabulous James Byerly, who is not only founder at Secure Point Solutions, but also somebody who has a solid meme game. I highly recommend. I mean, we're not calling it Rob Joyce levels of meme game, but James is right up there. All right, how's it going, James?
It's going well. It's going well. I think some of my twisted humor and sarcasm was as a result of being in a steel tube 600 feet under the water for months on end. So blame the government for that.
Okay, boomer.
Fast attacks.
There we go. Exactly. So for those of you that don't know that joke, actually, one of my little cousins is a boomer. That means a submariner. They're in a nuclear submarine, which is really, really cool, right? So yeah, I would normally never say that, but I just realized you were a boomer.
The joke. Yeah. And it's even a more competitive joke in the Navy, because the boomers are actually the missile subs, the ones that, you know, swim around and carry all the nuclear missiles to end the world. And then fast attacks, which are the ones that actually go out and get to do cool stuff and go places. So there's definitely a huge rivalry there. Thankfully, I was only fast attacks. And so I got to do the cool stuff instead of just poke holes in the ocean.
Poke holes in the ocean. Okay, so for those of you that have recently watched The Hunt for Red October, I just watched The Hunt for Red October with Deviant the other, like just a week or two ago. I think one of us was like, we're not feeling great. We're kind of tired. I feel like we should watch some real comfort stuff right here. You know, like Great British Bake Off or something with a lot of nuclear weapons in it. And so we watched The Hunt for Red October. So for those of you that watched it, the Red October is a boomer. It's a nuke. It has missiles in it. Okay. And the Alpha class attack sub, the Konovalov, I think is what it's called. It's the one that Stellan Skarsgård's the captain of, and the Dallas, which I think, I'm trying to remember the guy's name who is the captain of it. Shoot, hit me up in the comments on this one. But the Dallas and the Konovalov are attack subs, not boomers. Am I right? Did I get it right?
Well, so Dallas and the Konovalov were both okay. What do you call it? Attack submarines.
Very cool. Okay, that is the extent of my knowledge at this point. So it'll do. So James, I know we're going to have a longer conversation about especially kind of what constitutes password sharing and credential stuffing attacks a little bit later, because it's the most relevant attack for small businesses still. So what do we got this week? What's going on?
Well, so this week in some fun and great news, a French hospital was hit in a cyber attack. We'll quote that out there, and it exposed 750,000 patient records. Did I drop that in the right one or the wrong one?
I threw the banner up there. Yep, we're good.
There we go. That should be loading. So the big thing with this was that they estimate that it was done because of credential misuse or reuse in this case, which Tara and I were kind of talking about is stealing somebody's credential or buying a list or even just downloading a list of credentials and throwing those in there, brute forcing them. Does that actually count as real hacking? And I mean, it's still going to get you in trouble, but it's I just pulled up a brute force script that I had. It's 34 lines of code.
Yeah.
And, and it's publicly available. It's not difficult. Just you have to have the willingness to use it.
Well, like we were having a conversation about, I think it's people mixing up the medium and the method, right? Like there's a difference between being hacked and being defrauded. And sometimes they can be the same thing, right? But we all call Kevin Mitnick a hacker. And what was he doing? He wasn't particularly technically adept, frankly. What he was very good at was what we call social engineering. He could call up, an office, a workplace, convince people to give them their credentials. And then that was how he broke into most of the systems, including very famously DEC Systems back in the day, Digital Equipment Corporation. I got some friends who were on the other side of some honeypots and stuff like that. It's some really interesting work. work. But here's the thing. That is the same level of skill and the same attack that you would use if you were, what was it? I think I remember the classic one from Reservoir Dogs, where a bank was robbed by a guy with a note and a cell phone, right? That's a social engineering attack. The note was like, you gotta tell these people I'm doing this thing. And I use movie references all the time because it helps to explain it, frankly. I think there's a real difference between that. And a hack is a hack, but there's a difference between a hack, between a social engineering hack and and exploiting a vulnerability in the system, right? Like grabbing a POC, fully turning it into an exploit, weaponizing it. There's a difference in those two things, and both are devastating. But frankly, small businesses, you should not be worrying about CVE 10. You shouldn't know what those are yet, right?
And I would even say that there's even a nuance to the social engineering side, because if you are going to social engineer somebody, that does take some level of skill, because you are trying to exploit the human component.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are just going to throw a mess of email addresses and passwords at something and see what sticks,
Mm-hmm.
then that's, like I said, it's a handful of lines of code, and it's not not something that's all that difficult to do. So that's 90% of it, it's psychology. That's a perfect way to putting it there by Jones. So I mean, I think being able to bluff your way through a building. Now, granted, most cyber crimes don't involve Mr. Robot be damned. They're not going to bluff their way into a building and then plug in and steal all your company secrets. They're probably going to bluff their way in and steal computers or something. But there definitely is that line between, are you banging on a keyboard trying to figure out how to make the software do something it's not supposed to, or did you do the modern day equivalent of Matthew Broderick in War Games and just have your computer dial
auto dialers,
Sunnyvale, some good old war dialing.
So great. But war dialing, so that is a use of an automated system to break into another automated system. Like, that's a legit hack. That's a technical hack. But what did he do? I think he was playing pinball at the beginning of the movie, and didn't he have like some gum or something like stuck in it so he could grab his quarters back and stuff?
I think he did. I think he was doing the old string or gum trick. Yeah.
Yeah. I have no problem describing that as a technical exploit of a technical system.
Yep.
Right. Like this is a proto explanation of what we're going to have to be talking to people about for like ICS attacks. Right. You got industrial control systems, SCADA, like people's refrigerators have freaking iPads in them now. Like, you got to explain this stuff to people in a way that's understandable. But I think when I think of this attack right here, and this is the cyber attack at the French hospital, this is 750,000 people that don't give a damn about the technical classification of the hack that was done here, right? And it doesn't matter if you're purchasing or guessing, it doesn't matter. And these credentials that were stolen, one of the reasons we care so much about asking people about having unique, strong, different passwords that are appropriately governed in whatever organization they're in is because that is the primary defense against this exact cyber attack. And it's really exhausting to watch it happen again and again. And it is not the fault of the people whose records got stolen.
Yeah. And this is the password stuff is it's so massive, and there's plenty of ways to check if your passwords are good without having to go through a full pen test. Here at SecurePoint, we actually we periodically run an audit even on a customer's internal passwords, like through Active Directory. So that's something that we do on a monthly or quarterly basis, even though we do tell them, like, hey, you don't need to change your passwords that often, but we also know that somebody might get lazy with a password, or people are sharing passwords, which in some ways can be worse, especially if they work in completely different areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I feel like you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Like, you can take a look right now and see, we've got a story that had come out recently about T-Mobile getting breached, and the idea that they had actually managed to stop an attack kind of midstream, which is really fascinating.
Mhm.
Almost certainly what that means is, and I'm just going to guess on this one. I have no inside information on this one right here, but I'm looking at the pattern of communications, and this Salt Typhoon breach of T-Mobile is super interesting to me because if I had to guess, and I've got a small stack of $20 bills that says that there was a compromised employee credentials that were being used to spin up, view, and then potentially penetrate into different parts of
Yep.
the network. My guess is that whatever technical controls they had in place caught that as it was happening, possibly through the use of heuristic, algorithms. Basically, when I say heuristic algorithms, I mean AI, people. Like, it's fine. Like, you can use it for that, and that's a good idea. Well, we've been doing that for 25 years. I think this looks a lot, and again, no idea, super armchair quarterbacking this one. I think it looks like there were compromised credentials. And so how do you stop that from the beginning? You don't have the defenses T-Mobile has, right? Stop it from the beginning by preventing credentials from getting compromised across multiple systems by having unique passwords, right?
Yeah.
It's exhausting to figure it out, but at the same time, I feel like I'm looking at this French hospital, and my God, can you imagine the GDPR fines, like you were saying to me, for something like this? It's going to be insane. So the GDPR fines, like, it's not something that most small businesses in the US or MSSPs need to worry about, but that's something that is starting to become more and more, central to the existence of compliance. I mean, we're in
Yeah.
kind of a good business, right? Like, compliance takes a long time to trickle down to the part of the market that, that I care about, small and medium-sized businesses.
Yep.
It's just now that GDPR is meaningful to small businesses as well.
Yeah. Luckily for them, the maximum fine with GDPR, it's 2 million or 20 million euro, or 4% of the company's total worldwide annual turnover, whichever is higher. So, I don't know what this hospital system pulls down, but either way, it sounds like a lot of money. It's not a fine that anyone would want to have to pay. But at the same time, the hospital probably has insurance for this, so the insurance steps in, helps them pay for it. It's a write-off for the healthcare. I always kind of look at this stuff as like there's a giant bubble. Same thing with like credit card theft. Your card number gets stolen and gets misused, the bank is going to make you whole, and they're going to take the money back from the merchant and yada yada yada. But you're eventually, at some point, you're taking money that doesn't exist. So that creates this like credit card fraud bubble that who knows what will happen in the future with it. But I've always asked that question on how that's going to play out in the future.
Well, your question is closely related to cyber insurance payouts, I feel like, right? Cyber insurance, especially for small businesses. I mean, if we experience an event like Eternal Blue again, I think that we're gonna, and that is something that is really scary to small businesses, many of whom are still vulnerable to Eternal Blue. Oh God, patch your Windows 7 systems, or better yet, just get to 10 or 11 or anything at this point. I mean, I will take a random multiple of pi for your operating system at this
Install
point.
a Chromebook.
Right. So at the same time, like, no shade, right? Like, you use the right tool for the right job. Sometimes that's the tool for the job, especially if you have medical equipment in rural areas that is running off of Windows 7 and you can't patch it, and you just have it air gapped, basically, right? Like, some stuff we thought was air gapped was not air gapped. It was not air gapped. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I see those payouts in that bubble as being something that creates really kind of a pardon the expression, a typhoon of the kinds of claims that will all happen in one area, one industry that uses the same equipment, or it'll happen and be most impactful at a certain point in American business. It's really hard, right? That's the real question, is how do we get to a point where we're preventing this kind of thing? Because there's a bunch of people, I think, who are like, no, insurance is going to take care of it for me. My credit card company will take care of it for me. Well, you're going to get hit on the back end eventually, and it's going to be a regulatory blow. And you think it's kind of free now, but what's actually happening is that cost is getting offloaded someplace. And people who run financial institutions aren't stupid enough, frankly, to figure out how to pay that themselves. They're going to figure out a way to offload that risk, to mitigate and transfer the liability.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's, yeah, the service fees are, you know, something in that area. The other, you know, and I was kind of thinking about this, is you look at states like Florida, you know, Florida's becoming uninsurable for like flood insurance
Right.
and things like that. This, a large exploit, one of those exploits that, you know, its CVE number or its Microsoft number will be forever ingrained in our memories, much like Eternal Blue. One of those happens now that insurance companies have stepped into that fray. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It probably will be the first time and the last time there was this mass payout from the insurance industry for cyber liability, because then after that, I think a lot of those insurance companies are going to step back and say, yeah, that sucked. That's not happening again. We can only ramp up people's rates so much, you know?
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's what exclusions start to happen, right?
Yep.
And you know, we've had a lot of conversations about cyber insurance here, and it's hard to make these things exciting, but the reason we keep repeating why they matter is because look, small businesses that are, you're going to pay. Dear all small businesses ever, you're going to pay for cyber incidents no matter what. You're either going to pay because you're going to pay increased rates on your cyber insurance policy premiums.
Yep.
Or you're going to pay because you don't have cyber insurance and you can't recover from a breach, and you just probabilistically pay out. You either lose your business or you pay for on-demand incident response. And frankly, I don't know any company that starts with an incident response with a retainer of less than $75,000 to start. Okay, like meaningful, real, like there's a bunch of shady, you know, artists out there, but good information security incident response firms, they're going to ask for a retainer up front, because if you don't recover your business, I mean, it's not looking good.
Yeah, absolutely. So that begs the question: will 0 days become the cyber version of acts of God clauses in insurance stuff? Because you can, because you know, obviously we know all the other things that can happen, you know, phishing and yada yada yada, but 0 day, you don't know what that's going to look like. You don't know what the scope of it's going to be. Much like, hey, if a meteor hit your house right now, well, that's like an act of God or act of the universe. No one could have predicted it. So yeah, that's the question. Now I need to start looking at some insurance claim or insurance information.
So I'm going to throw something out there in the comments, folks. If you don't know her, Professor Josephine Wolf at Tufts University wrote an amazing book on exactly this topic, kind of this idea that risk, you know, is really quickly bucketed out into sort of like, oh, we're willing to price in the possibility of that event and then shelter you against it happening to you, versus this concept of like acts of God. And this is what is so fascinating about the Maersk case that was tied to Mondelez International for the NotPetya attacks. This is why this is so cool. In 2017, Mondelez International, the makers, and I want to bring you on my side here for some high stakes in this story, James. The makers of the Oreo cookie were cyber attacked. Okay, and the way that happened was at a third order, because their shipments were in Maersk containers and they were impacted by WannaCry, by NotPetya.
Yep.
So the NotPetya attack, which was based on Eternal Blue, right? There's long live Eternal Blue and that CVE number, right? That attack damaged them to the tune of more than $100 million. And I know that because I know that the Mondelez International cyber writer for Zurich Insurance, which was their cyber insurance coverage firm, had a $100 million rider there, so that if they experienced a cyber attack or damages from a cyber attack, they would be able to they'd be able to recover from that. Here's the problem. The problem is that in this case, it's not acts of God that was being used as an exclusion. It was acts of war. And NotPetya was extremely clearly Russia attacking Ukraine and the United States. So Ukraine mostly, right? This was extremely clearly an attack from Russia to on Ukraine. And because it was so clearly an act of war, and interestingly enough, one of the few times that we are super, super comfortable with attribution, right? It's rare and hard to do attribution in cyber attacks. So Zurich International, or Zurich Insurance out of Switzerland, go figure, claimed that because this was an act of war, Mondelez International was not covered under their cyber insurance policy. If you go check your own house insurance policy, like your homeowner's policy or your renter's insurance, you're going to see an exclusion in there for acts of God and acts of war. Okay. And that's because these insurance companies aren't promising anything in a situation like that. What they're doing is they're excluding anything that is so systemic and so outside the bounds of their control that they can't appropriately price the risk. So I believe what happened most recently was Maersk, which was the shipping container owners, ended up settling with Zurich Insurance. And I believe Mondelez International was part of that settlement. I have to take a more close look at it. But if you want to understand what acts of war are doing to cyber policy, go read Josephine's book. I think I either blurbed it or I definitely read. I read it and I remember giving her comments in advance on it. It is actually kind of a bang and read. Like there's a real explanation for why there were film crews, 10 years ago doing stuff like filming in Israel. And they weren't, and they had experiences with local violence that were unrelated to them, right? This had nothing whatsoever to do with them, but they were impacted by it. Their filming crews were impacted by it, and their filming production insurance wouldn't cover it because they said it was an act of war, even though it wasn't one these people were involved in, had anything whatsoever to do with, and weren't in the geographic locations that were impacted. Yep. So that is so fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to those of you who haven't had a chance to read it, give it a shot. Josephine Wolf is a brilliant human being, and she's funny as hell. In this book, it's called Cybersecurity Policy Rethinking Risk Rethinking Cyber Attacks in the Age of Information or whatever. It sounds like you should use it instead of Ambien. And actually, it is a full-on page turner, really. So yeah, go James.
This is still very much uncharted territory for insurance. It really is. They're still figuring out when it's okay to help pay the ransom and when it's not okay. From people I've talked to in the industry, they say that there's a list of good bad guys and bad guys. So essentially, I can cut this organization a check to get my files back, and I'm not funding Iran's, nuclear weapons research program. I'm just funding organized crime or something. And so there's, it's all, it's all just what's a little racketeering between friends, right? But it's so tough. And, and we talk about these, the millions and billions of dollars that are going into these, the damage to these companies. But again, did Maersk go out of business? No. Did Mondelez stop making cookies? No. They maybe had
Thank God. Right. Thank God. Continue.
Right. They had a dip in stocks. They
dip in
they might have had to lay off some people, but ultimately they are still there. But a small business getting hit with even a $10,000 or $10,000, $50,000 ransom, or just their stuff just being shut down and they can't operate. Like that's it. That it's pack up, go somewhere else. And even if you do have cyber insurance, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to recover. When we talk, I talk about disaster recovery with a lot of customers, and they don't really think about it until I say something along the lines of, all right, imagine I take your computer, you, the owner of the company, and I throw it out on the interstate and it gets smashed by a truck. How long are you going to be able to operate without that laptop? And they may say, well, a couple of days. All right. Can you survive paying everybody for a couple of days? Or do you have to send them home? Or, what happens if a tornado hits your building? It's all the same risk in the loss of the ability to function, loss of business function, but it's not, for some reason, a lot of small businesses don't equate the risks of natural disasters with the risks of cyber attacks. And we always talk about, stop talking about tools and processes, talk about outcomes. And it's like the outcome is the same. Ransomware and a tornado probably can do the same amount of stuff to your business. At least if a tornado hits, you're probably you're probably at least able to get your data off the cloud and work somewhere else. But if that data has all been encrypted or just destructively wiped, yeah, it's over.
Well, I'm interested too. There's something that really kind of popped in my mind. I don't think of cyber insurance as fundamentally a bad thing or a negative
No.
signal, but there's a big difference in how cyber insurance is perceived between very large and very small companies. I tend to think of cyber insurance as a net positive, a way to decrease the risk on an individual level for businesses that might experience, a once in a lifetime cyber attack. And there's going to be a lot of businesses that experience more and more of it. At the top end of the market, cyber insurance is perceived as ransom payoffs. It's not perceived as incident response or needing to have somebody get your systems back up, because they've already gone way past that. They already have the cloud redundancy. They've already got, vaults. They've already got hot backups offsite. Like they're going to be fine mostly. And their concern is not about whether or not their systems work and they can, like our clients are truckers and accountants and lawyers. Their concern is not necessarily about whether or not they can protect their data or if they're going to be blackmailed. Their concern is if they can operate, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of companies I think you and I work with that have no concept of a data breach, right? They wouldn't care if it happened and wouldn't notice it if it happened to their systems. That's really scary. But to them, cyber insurance is something that would let them get back up in terms of disaster recovery. For very large companies, that's not part of the logic there. Buying cyber insurance can even be seen as a negative signal, I've heard, among the Fortune 500. Right? Like, what do you do? What are you planning to do? Pay some ransom? Because of course you're already set for your business continuity and disaster recovery in a way small businesses are not. I wonder if there's a way to differentiate in those two things.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it comes down to, what would not having access to that data, what would it do to you? And in, or, and in a small company, like you said, they can't get into it for some reason, then that's that. Big business, like, they're already switching to the hot site. They're already doing those things. So that, yeah, there's got to be a line, but I can't, all I can really think of is just, is it something based on time? Like how long was, Maersk or any of these guys, how long were they crippled?
3 weeks is the answer. 3 weeks and 40% of the world's shipping capacity in the NotPetya attack.
And the boats, some of the boats still sailed, not all of them, but yeah, there was obviously a sharp hit to shipping, and didn't even require anyone to T-bone the Suez Canal. And I got to throw in an evergreen joke every now and again.
It's so great. It is an evergreen joke. Yeah, you got it.
And so I mean, those things, nobody died without their cookies. Where okay. We're 3 days without cookies, anarchy. I get it.
Okay, continue.
But I think, a lot of, but could a small business survive 3 weeks without the ability to operate? Or, as I've seen in a couple instances where they can operate in a very, very limited manner and the money's trickling in, but then if and when they recover, now a client that I previously worked with, they had to hire temps to now take all the paper documentation and jam it into their actual accounting system. So now they're paying 2 extra people, to do all this extra work. And they had, however long, I think it was like 6 days of very minimal revenue. So that overall, it's quite a kick in the shorts for a small business to do that. And, they might have been a little bit better off than others, but there is definitely that line of how long can you go without this or that.
The answer, it turns out, is not very long, right? Here's another, and this is another one. When you read between the lines, it's absolutely a compromised credential, right? It's just problems with passwords again. This is the Stop and Shop in Boston. I'm actually in Boston right now for the IANS forum here in Boston and having a good time. I did the keynote this morning, did a roundtable for some CISOs and talked about international regulation. And it is fascinating and fun to get a chance to do that. And at the same time, just outside here, we're dealing with stores that don't have produce showing up on their shelves, right?
Yep.
And they don't have that as a result of losing access to their systems from a cyber attack like this one. And yes, even if you are experiencing a data breach, even if you're experiencing somebody who's, logging in using, granddad's credentials, that's still a cyber attack. It's just at this point, are we really going to keep leaving the front door unlocked and ajar with a sign that says welcome on the front of it when there's nobody in the store anymore, right? There's at some point, we have to start having a conversation around the fact that for auto insurance, if you leave the keys in your car and it's running and the door is open and you leave it alone in a parking lot all night long, is it illegal to steal that car? Yes. Will the person get prosecuted? Yes. But is there going to be a series of questions and issues from the insurance adjuster because you didn't secure the property
Yep.
in the way that you promised to do in the documents you signed with them? Also, yes. And
That's
so
in the
there's
document. I didn't read that.
that's at least part of it too.
That
That
is.
people
That
aren't
truly
reading
is.
it. Yeah, they're not
We-
reading the documents.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I read every single document out there. There's documents what are you going to do? Not sign the document that lets you, renew the lease on your car, on your house, right? We're all
Right.
trying to just live here,
Right.
So
Yeah.
do you have a choice to not sign something? I might sometimes skip things that I don't have a choice about signing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Although if it's if it's anything maybe Disney related, I might really look at that now in case I get bit by an alligator at the Magic Kingdom and now
That
I
is
can't sue 'em.
magnificent.
And
Oh,
and
wow.
it's and you bring up the car, and I like to use that as that analogy. And it's all those things of, there's an expectation of what you should have when you're taking care of your car, what you should have when you're taking care of your business. And today, and I should have grabbed it, but I saw something where there was a company or maybe a bunch of companies that were too heavily reliant on their EDR, their host-based EDR, that they had like almost no network protection. And
Oh, wow.
and it was
That's not what zero trust means, people.
right. I don't trust my network, so I'm just not going to do anything to it.
I'm
But
not
I
gonna do anything to it. Yeah. Oh, and I
yeah,
also threw up a link on the wrongful death lawsuit we were talking about with Disney.
There you
Like,
go.
read the fine print and like the hold harmless clauses in there. I don't want to go fight those Disney attack lawyers. Do you? Right. So yeah, but you're so right about this one, right? If you've got a setup where you've got EDR on machines but no network protection, like that's a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And we always talk about layers of security. That doesn't mean smear on one really thick layer of EDR.
Mhm.
There's still going to be gaps no matter how much you use that. And it's, if your spend was so massive on one product that you had no money to protect any other areas of it, you've kind of faltered there.
It's like a sandwich. Within an order of reason, more ingredients are better, right? And you want them in the correct proportion. So
Yes.
you're building a delicious and tasty club sandwich. Like there's a sandwich called the Turkey Jive at a joint in Seattle that I super, super love. And it's like Thanksgiving in a bun, right? And they had this like cranberry mustard situation happening, right? Like, so there's like a sandwich, you're building not only layers, but you have to have them in the proper proportions. Difference matters, and choosing things that harmonize matters. I was also just watching the Great British Bake Off, and I noticed that somebody got in a little bit of trouble over having a coffee and lemon curd together. Why? Because coffee and lemon together, maybe they don't taste as great as they possibly could.
Toothpaste and orange juice.
Toothpaste and orange juice, or chocolate and mushrooms. Like these things are both absolutely delicious, but you don't necessarily want them together, right?
Yeah.
And so that's part of the choice. And it's a fascinating one. When you've given recommendations on network protection, again, one of the interesting things here too is that a lot of smaller businesses fundamentally don't have a concept of a network, right? They don't have an internal network. They may have some. We're talking some of the legacy businesses. Maybe you got, the old folks' home's got a LAN. Probably that's the stuff that my stepdad used to go fix a lot with his MSP.
Yep.
You'd have, computers in a couple of different rooms and cabling just running around. And now a lot of people are just migrated straight to the cloud, right?
Yeah.
There's no on-prem anymore meaningfully. How do you have that conversation with them when they think it's somebody else's business and problem that's the issue?
So when the companies that are now so reliant on wireless, and like I'm amazed anytime I go to a small business and I find a managed switch, it's like, great, it's managed, maybe I can get something from it. But so we kind of look at it from 2 points. Okay, the endpoint that's in your building and your firewall. And if we can, we have tools and techniques that allow us to tap in off those firewalls. And we're just looking for things like, hey, is there weird communication coming from a machine to an IP that it shouldn't? Is there really long connections being made that indicate possible data exfiltration? And then the other simple stuff of like, hey, don't go to websites that or IP addresses that have a terrible reputation. So, because the one thing is that in most cases, the network data is the truth and it's really hard to fake. So if we can at least capture and block and alert to some of that. So a lot of times, it's the conversation of just saying, hey, look, we have to be able to see what's going on.
Right.
And, I can't protect what I can't see.
Well, remember, folks, the difference between a cyber attack and managed services is permission. The consent of the surveilled, people. Right?
Yes. It's just like ransomware is a non-consensual disaster recovery drill.
Absolutely. That's precisely what it is. Professor Elizabeth Zwicky once said, people all want really, really good backup until they have their systems all go down. And then they discover that what they actually wanted was a restore button. And that's at least part of what we're beginning to learn from a lot of these attacks. I've been asked this question several times. Tara, what are you going to be working on, over the next 10 years? And I have repeatedly said the exact same thing. Business email compromise, invoice fraud, and ransomware. All right. Those are the 3 things I'm going to be working on for 10 years. I'm like, but that's not interesting. It's been technically solved. And I was like, yeah, it's been technically solved. But the problem is that the way you get to all 3 of those things is credential compromise. And credential compromise is just not at a place where we don't have the physical protections any longer for small businesses. They're just getting absolutely ransacked, and it's annoying. I'm vexed. I'm very vexed.
Well, and not to mention that is the attack surface is the human condition, and it's we want to help. A sense of urgency often bothers us, things like that. But because all 3 of those things you bring up, they're usually pushed through by email. So until we have some tried and true way of opening every email and detonating it to see what's in it, or training an AI to read this and say, hey, this looks wonky. But then AI is also doing the opposite side. It's helping attackers write better emails. We just did a phishing for a client of ours, and I told our team, I said, make this one as hard and targeted as possible, because that is the world we live in. And we need to be able to talk about that, not as a gotcha moment, but as okay, if you saw this email, what would probably be the best way to go about it, rather than just opening the attachment or something like that. So those are tough problems to solve and everything, but they're all, until we can figure that way to patch the human being, we're not getting it solved anytime soon.
I sometimes get asked how I screw up in information security, and I'll give you one. I had a screw up this last week. I missed a really important email about benefits at Red Queen, right? Like this matters. Like, this is my job. I'm supposed to do that. And I missed this email because it looked to me, when I flicked through it with my eyeballs before, I was like, bye, out of here, archive, junk, whatever. And I maintain inbox 0 with a deep and divided dedication, like a monastic dedication to inbox 0, right? I have to. So I get emails out of there. And when I came across this email, it looked like AI slop to me. And it was about benefits. And it was a person writing to me. And I don't know if they were using maybe an AI assist tool in writing emails. It's more and more common to use those if you don't speak perfect idiomatic American English. It's common to start having an AI assistant in your email client that will help you write stuff. The problem is that looks like AI wrote it. And
Yep.
so I missed it because I just assumed, oh, it's another marketing email. And then I get a notice like, X is, unless you do this, that, and the other thing, X is going to terminate on this date and that. And I was like, what the? And then I
No.
emailed back and I'm sitting there going like, I missed this. And I feel like I should apologize, but also I'm very angry. So I went with an apologetic rage in the email. I think like, I'm very sorry to have missed this thing that was very clearly your fault for not being able to the problem is that we have these fails because we're humans. And
Yep.
so spear phishing, phishing training works really well, I think, the first time to help people understand what a phishing email looks like. But on an ongoing basis in large organizations, I mean, I think there's really, really diminishing returns on continuing to do phishing trainings beyond instead just going straight to FIDO2, right? The FIDO Alliance and the ability to do that is it matters because we need to start exploding all links anyway, which means any automated phishing training is going to bump right into that, right? You got to white label that or whitelist that those URLs for phishing training in any organization that's doing a good job. You've got to whitelist. I've clearly got marketing on my brain. You got to whitelist all of the URLs that are involved in your phishing training, and a lot of them people are just going to explode anyway because they're just in the habit of doing that. You've got to solve that problem for human behavior. It's not a technical solution.
Yep, absolutely. And honestly, the cost of hardware tokens is about the annual cost to train somebody from security awareness, and
about how much is that, you think, on an annual basis? What's the price?
I mean, for us, I mean, I think a user gets charged around $60 a year for security awareness. And, some of ours is more bespoke because I will throw coffee at people and sit with them, and it's more of a natural conversation. But yeah, I would say most MSPs and things are, they're probably charging around $60 when I think I just bought YubiKeys and some backups. And I think those were $60 or $70. And that certainly solves at least the credential issue everywhere that it can be used. And that also obviously pushes the whole adoption angle of hardware tokens and things like that,
I hear it. Well, as we start to wrap up this week, the discussion this week was on news involving the not just phishing, not just credentials, but I feel like we have to continually resurface the fact that different parts of the market have different problems. And I'm a little tired of explaining that at this point. I will keep doing it because I'm angry, and my angry is still outpacing my tired right now on this one. So I feel like we have to keep surfacing the fact that these problems exist, and at the same time reaffirm that there are a lot of good folks out there that can help solve these problems, right? The entire MSP community, the entire community of people who build security products that are dedicated to this section of the market, slightly smaller than the one that you'll find for enterprise. And also just people who are starting to really recognize, I think, that they are vulnerable in a way that they never understood before.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something I think we're going to really want to focus on, is not just that it's bad, but that there's hope. And for God's sake, get yourself some password management, right?
Yep.
That's the thing that's causing a great deal of this. Get yourself password management, get yourself on FIDO if you possibly can, so that you're not dealing with the same kind of spear phishing attacks, at least on a percentage basis. And once you've done that, then you're not the slowest gazelle at the watering hole anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Hackers are lazy. I'm lazy. Aren't you lazy? I'm pretty lazy.
I tend to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like all we've been doing the entire time, right? Like I put the image of an Oreo cookie in your head, and now are you even going to be able to sit still long enough to close this stream down before you dash for the cabinet? I know I'm heading for I think I got some little biscuits in there someplace and some shortbread.
Yeah, I'm definitely, before my next thing, I'm definitely going to go look for some sort of cookie-like substance.
Yeah, I know, right? Like grab a little of that speculoos or something like that, or cookie with see, this is my problem. Now I want a cookie. And I am one of those insane people that actually really likes oatmeal raisin cookies. Okay. Apparently, this is a huge point of conflict amongst a bunch of people. Like oatmeal raisin cookies are the devil or something like that.
So my take on them, I don't mind them, but they have to be clearly labeled, because on more than one occasion have I taken one, bit into it, to find out that it's not a chocolate chip cookie. And then now you know why office, workplace violence happens. Because
absolutely. Right. That is a cause to microwave fish right, if that happens to you
Yes.
in an office. I
Yes.
agree strongly. All right. Yeah, James, take us the heck out of here for this. Oh, and one last thing, of course, next week, folks, we're gonna throw up a little video to stream next week, and it'll be entertaining, I hope. But of course, next week is Thanksgiving at this time, so we're looking forward to seeing you folks again on, I think, what the heck is it? It's going to be December 4th, or no, 5th, December 5th. We should have some pretty fun stuff and a surprise guest that week for us as well. It's going to be a nice little treat. Just as a treat, just a bit on the weekends. So yeah, James, get us out of here.
Yeah. Well, Tara, thanks for joining. Thanks for everyone that's watching here. And we will be back in a couple weeks. Enjoy your turkey. Don't eat too much. If you need help with compliance or security, reach out to Red Queen and we'll get you sorted. But bye for now. Biscotti sounds great.
Save that biscotti for me. All right, friends.
Yes. Bye now.